The claiming ceremony was held beneath a blood-red moon in the heart of Valdris territory. Hundreds of wolves had gathered in the great stone amphitheater, their bodies pressed together on the carved benches that rose in tiered circles around the central platform. Torchlight flickered against ancient pillars, casting dancing shadows across faces filled with anticipation. Aelith stood at the edge of the platform, her hands trembling at her sides. She had dreamed of this night since she was a child, the night when Varen, firstborn son of the late Alpha and brother to the current Alpha King, would claim her as his mate before the entire pack. 3 years they had been promised to each other. 3 years of stolen glances and whispered vows. 3 years of Aelith believing she was loved. "You look beautiful," Brielle had told her that morning, while braiding silver flowers into Aelith's dark hair. Varen is the luckiest wolf in all the territories. Now, standing before the massive crowd, Aelith searched for Varen's face. He stood across the platform in ceremonial black, his golden hair catching the torchlight. But something was wrong. His jaw was tight. His eyes wouldn't meet hers. "We gather tonight to witness a sacred bond," the elder announced, his ancient voice carrying across the amphitheater. "Varen of House Valdris has chosen his mate. Let him speak his claim." The crowd fell silent. Aelith's heart hammered against her ribs as Varen finally stepped forward. She offered him a shy smile, the smile she had practiced in the mirror, the one she hoped conveyed all the love she felt. Varen's lip curled. "I reject this bond." The words hit Aelith like a physical blow. For a moment, she couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The world tilted beneath her feet. "I reject Aelith of the Ember bloodline," Varen continued, his voice rising so every wolf present could hear. "She is beneath me, weak, unworthy of standing beside a son of Valdris." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Then someone laughed. A single, cruel bark of amusement that broke the dam. Suddenly, laughter poured from the benches, filling the amphitheater with its vicious echo. "Look at her face," a woman's voice rang out. She actually thought he wanted her. An ember wolf thinking she could mate into the royal bloodline, another sneered. Pathetic. Aelith's vision blurred, but she refused to let the tears fall. Her legs threatened to buckle, but she locked her knees, forcing herself to remain standing. She would not collapse, she would not give them that satisfaction, but the laughter grew louder. Wolves pointed at her, their faces twisted with mockery. Some threw wilted flowers at her feet. One young male pretended to swoon, clutching his chest in exaggerated heartbreak, while his friends howled with amusement. Enough. The single word cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. Instantly, the laughter died. The jeering stopped. Every head in the amphitheater turned toward the figure descending from the highest tier of benches. Kaelin. The Alpha King moved through the crowd, and wolves parted before him like water before a ship's prow. He was taller than his brother, broader across the shoulders, with dark hair that fell past his collar, and eyes the color of a winter storm. Where Varen was golden and polished, Kaelin was shadow and steel. He had ruled Valdris for 5 years, ever since their father's death. In that time, he had expanded their territory threefold, and crushed 3 rival packs, who dared challenge him. They called him the Silent King, because he rarely spoke. When he did, wolves listened, or they died. "Brother." Varen's confident smirk faltered slightly. "This doesn't concern you. I'm simply exercising my right to reject an unsuitable match." Kaelin didn't respond. He continued walking until he reached the platform, then climbed the steps with deliberate slowness. His gaze swept over Aelith, and she felt that look like a physical touch, assessing, penetrating, and seeing past her tear-stained cheeks to something beneath. "Unsuitable," Kaelin repeated. His voice was low, a rumble of distant thunder. "You find her unsuitable. She's an ember wolf," Varen said, as if that explained everything. "Their bloodline is weak, diluted. She would produce inferior heirs." The crowd murmured agreement. The ember wolves had fallen from prominence generations ago. They were servants now, laborers, certainly not worthy of royalty. But Kaelin wasn't looking at the crowd. He was looking at Aelith. "What is your name?" he asked. Aelith's throat tightened. The Alpha King was speaking to her directly. To her. "Aelith, your majesty." "Aelith." He said her name slowly, as if tasting it. "Do you know what I see when I look at you?" She shook her head, unable to form words. "I see a woman who has been publicly humiliated by a coward," Kaelin said, his voice rising so the entire amphitheater could hear. "A woman who has not shed a single tear despite her pain. A woman who stands with her spine straight when lesser wolves would have crumbled." Varen's face flushed red. "Brother." You can't seriously. I see strength, Kaelin continued, ignoring him. I see dignity. I see a wolf worthy of standing beside a king. The crowd went utterly silent. Even the torches seemed to stop flickering. Kaelin extended his hand toward Aelith. His palm was upturned, an offering, rather than a command. If my brother is fool enough to reject you, he said quietly, the words meant for her alone, then I will claim what he has discarded. Aelith stared at his hand. This couldn't be real. The Alpha King, the most powerful wolf in 4 territories, was offering to claim her? She, an ember wolf, a nobody, a joke to everyone present? Your Majesty, this is madness, the elder sputtered. The ceremony was arranged for Varen, not. I am the Alpha King. Kaelin's voice turned to ice. I do not require permission to claim my mate, his mate. The word sent a shockwave through Aelith's body. Through the entire amphitheater, she heard gasps, whispers, Varen's strangled protest, but all she could see was Kaelin's outstretched hand. All she could feel was the impossible hope blooming in her chest. Slowly, hardly believing her own daring, Aelith placed her fingers in his palm. Kaelin's hand closed around hers, warm and impossibly strong. He pulled her gently toward him, and she went willingly, drawn by something deeper than logic. When she stood before him, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body, he reached up and brushed a strand of hair from her face. The gesture was so tender, so unexpectedly gentle from a man known for his ruthlessness, that Aelith's breath caught. No one will laugh at you again, he murmured against her ear. I swear it on my blood. Then, before the stunned crowd, before his seething brother, before the elder, who had forgotten how to speak, the Alpha King lowered his head and pressed his lips to Aelith's forehead in the traditional mark of claiming. The crowd erupted, not in laughter this time, but in shocked exclamations, frantic whispers, gasps of disbelief. But Aelith heard none of it. She was lost in the slate-colored gaze of the wolf who had just changed her entire life, and in those eyes, she saw something that terrified her far more than Varen's rejection ever could. She saw hunger. The walk from the amphitheater to the Alpha King's fortress passed in a blur of moonlight and shadow. Kaelin kept his hand pressed firmly against the small of Aelith's back, guiding her through corridors of stone and past guards who bowed low as they passed. No one laughed now. No one even dared to meet her eyes. You're trembling, Kaelin observed. I'm cold, Aelith lied. She wasn't cold. She was terrified. An hour ago, she had been preparing to mate the man she thought she loved. Now she walked beside his brother, the most feared alpha in living memory, bound to him by a claim she didn't understand. Why had he done it? What did he want from her? Here, Kaelin paused before a massive oak door carved with wolves running beneath a crescent moon. These will be your chambers. Aelith blinked. My chambers? Not yours? Something flickered across Kaelin's face. Amusement? Surprise? She couldn't tell. Did you expect me to drag you to my bed the moment we arrived? Heat flooded Aelith's cheeks. I didn't know what to expect, Your Majesty. Kaelin. His voice softened almost imperceptibly. When we are alone, you will call me Kaelin. She nodded, not trusting her voice. He pushed open the door, revealing a chamber larger than her entire family home. A fire crackled in the hearth. Silk curtains framed windows overlooking moonlit gardens. The bed was massive, draped in furs and velvet, large enough for 4 people. A servant will bring you food and fresh clothing, Kaelin said. Rest. We will speak tomorrow. He turned to leave, but Aelith caught his sleeve before she could stop herself. He went very still at her touch. Why? She whispered. Why did you claim me? You don't know me. You've never even spoken to me before tonight. Kaelin turned slowly. In the firelight, his features seemed sharper, more predatory. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a growl. Because the moment my brother spoke your name, something inside me recognized you. His eyes dropped to her throat, and Aelith saw his pupils dilate. Something ancient, something I cannot explain, something that demanded I make you mine before anyone else could touch you. Aelith's heart stuttered. What does that mean? I don't know yet. He reached up, and his fingertips ghosted along her jawline, so light she might have imagined it. But I intend to find out. Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. Aelith stood frozen in the center of the magnificent room, her skin still tingling where he had touched her. His words echoed in her mind. Something inside me recognized you. What could that possibly mean? She moved to the window, pressing her palm against the cool glass. The gardens below were beautiful, silver-kissed by moonlight, but beyond them she could see the dark edge of the Valdris forest. Somewhere out there, her mother would be waiting for news of the ceremony, waiting to hear that her daughter had been successfully mated. "I'm so sorry, Mama," Aelith thought. Everything has changed. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Enter," she called. Brielle burst through the door, her face flushed with exertion. "I came as fast as I could. The guards wouldn't let me through at first. But then one of them received orders from—" She stopped, staring at the opulent chamber. "Sweet moon above. These are the Queen's quarters." The Queen's— Aelith's voice failed her. "No, that can't be right." "It is." Brielle grabbed her hands. "Aelith, do you understand what happened tonight? The Alpha King didn't just claim you. He claimed you as his queen. His equal. Everyone is talking about it. Varen is apparently destroying his chambers in rage." Aelith sank onto the edge of the bed, her legs suddenly unable to support her. "This is insane. I'm nobody. I'm an Ember Wolf. How can I be a queen?" Brielle sat beside her. "How did it feel when he touched you?" Aelith closed her eyes, remembering the heat of his palm against her back, the electric brush of his fingers on her jaw. "It felt like lightning," she admitted. "Like every nerve in my body woke up at once." "That's the bond," Brielle breathed. "A true mate bond. I've heard stories, but I never thought—" Another knock cut her off. This one was sharper, more demanding. "Come in," Aelith called, expecting a servant. It wasn't a servant. Varen stood in the doorway, his golden hair disheveled, his ceremonial clothes torn at the collar. His eyes were wild with fury. "Get out," he snarled at Brielle. "Now." Brielle looked at Aelith, fear flashing across her face. "Go," Aelith whispered. "Find help." The moment Brielle slipped past Varen and disappeared down the corridor, he stepped inside and slammed the door shut. "You conniving little witch," he hissed, advancing toward her. "You planned this, didn't you? All along you were scheming to seduce my brother." Aelith stood, refusing to cower. "You rejected me, Varen. Publicly, cruelly. What your brother did had nothing to do with me." "Liar!" He grabbed her wrist, yanking her toward him. "My brother has never shown interest in any female. Never. And suddenly he claims you? An Ember Wolf? There's something you're not telling me. You're hurting me." "Good." His grip tightened. "Because that's nothing compared to what I'm going to." The door exploded inward. Kaelin stood in the shattered doorway, and Aelith barely recognized him. His eyes had turned pure gold, blazing like molten metal. His canines had elongated into fangs. A growl poured from his throat, low and terrible, vibrating through the very stones of the castle. "Release her." The words were barely human. Now, Varen dropped Aelith's wrist as if it had burned him. "Brother, I was merely—" Kaelin moved so fast Aelith saw only a blur. One moment, Varen stood before her. The next he was pinned against the wall, Kaelin's hand wrapped around his throat. "If you ever touch her again," Kaelin said, his voice eerily calm despite the violence trembling through his body, "I will tear your heart from your chest and feed it to the crows." Brother or not, he released Varen, who crumpled to the floor gasping. "Leave this fortress," Kaelin commanded. "Tonight, you are exiled from the royal quarters until I decide otherwise." Varen scrambled to his feet, his face twisted with hatred. "This isn't over," he spat. "She's hiding something. I'll prove it." He fled into the corridor, leaving destruction in his wake. Kaelin turned to Aelith, his eyes fading from gold back to gray. "Are you hurt?" She showed him her wrist, where bruises were already forming in the shape of Varen's fingers. Something dark passed across Kaelin's face. Without a word, he lifted her wrist to his lips and pressed the softest of kisses against the damaged skin. Aelith gasped. Heat flooded through her, emanating from the point of contact, spreading down her arm and into her chest. For a dizzying moment, she felt connected to him in a way she couldn't explain, as if their heartbeats had synchronized. Kaelin's eyes widened. He felt it too. She could see it in his expression. "What is happening to us?" she whispered, but Kaelin had no answer. He only stared at her with those thundercloud eyes. And beneath the surface, Aelith glimpsed something that stole the air from her lungs. Fear. The Alpha King, the most powerful wolf in 4 territories, was afraid, and somehow, that terrified her more than anything else that had happened tonight. Sleep eluded Aelith despite the luxurious bed and crackling fire. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Kaelin's golden gaze, felt the electric pulse that had passed between them when his lips touched her wrist. By the time dawn painted the windows pale gold, she had given up entirely. She dressed in the simple gown a servant had left for her, and ventured into the corridor, determined to find answers. The fortress was vast, a labyrinth of stone hallways and ancient tapestries depicting wolves in battle. Guards nodded respectfully as she passed, but none offered guidance. Aelith wandered until she found herself in a courtyard garden, where morning mist curled around rose bushes heavy with crimson blooms. You shouldn't be out here alone. Aelith spun to find an elderly woman seated on a stone bench, nearly invisible among the shadows of a willow tree. Her hair was silver white, her face mapped with wrinkles, but her eyes were sharp as daggers. I'm sorry, Aelith said. I didn't realize anyone was here. Few do. That's rather the point. The woman patted the bench beside her. Sit. You have questions. I might have answers. Aelith hesitated, then sat. Who are you? Marin. I was healer to Kaelin's father before him, and his grandfather before that. She studied Aelith with unsettling intensity. You're the Ember Girl who captured our king. The entire fortress is buzzing about you. I didn't capture anyone, Aelith protested. He claimed me. I still don't understand why. Marin's thin lips curved into a knowing smile. Don't you touch your wrist, the one his brother grabbed. Aelith looked down at her wrist, expecting to see the purple bruises from Varen's grip. Instead, she found unmarked skin, completely healed. That's impossible, she breathed. It was bruised. I saw it. And then Kaelin kissed it, Marin said. And now it's whole. Curious, isn't it? How do you know about that? I know many things, child. I know that when Kaelin touched you last night, something awakened. Something that has been sleeping in your bloodline for generations. Marin leaned closer. The Ember Wolves were not always servants, Aelith. Once, long ago, they were the most powerful wolves in all the territories. Aelith shook her head. That's just legend. Stories to make us feel better about our fall. Is it? Marin reached out and pressed a finger to Aelith's chest, directly over her heart. Then tell me why I feel ancient magic stirring inside you, waiting to be unleashed. Heat flared beneath Marin's touch, and Aelith jerked backward, gasping. For a split second, she felt something coil within her chest, something vast and slumbering that seemed to respond to the old woman's words. What was that? Aelith demanded. The beginning. Marin rose from the bench, suddenly looking older and more frail. Find Kaelin. Ask him about the prophecy of the silver flame. And be careful, child. There are those in this fortress who would rather see you dead than see that power awaken. She shuffled away, disappearing through an archway before Aelith could ask anything more. The silver flame. A prophecy. Ancient magic. Aelith pressed her hand over her heart, still feeling the phantom heat of Marin's touch. What was happening to her? She found Kaelin in the great hall, seated at a massive table covered with maps and documents. Advisors clustered around him, their voices raised in debate. The moment Aelith entered, silence fell. Leave us, Kaelin commanded, without looking up. The advisors exchanged glances but obeyed, filing past Aelith with expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. When the door closed behind them, Kaelin finally raised his eyes. You should be resting. I couldn't sleep. Aelith crossed the hall until she stood on the opposite side of the table. Maps of territories she didn't recognize separated them like a battlefield. I met someone this morning, an old healer named Marin. Something flickered in Kaelin's expression. Marin speaks when she shouldn't. She told me about a prophecy, the silver flame. Aelith watched his face carefully. She said the Ember Wolves were once powerful. That something is awakening inside me. Kaelin was very still. And you want to know if it's true. I want to know why you really claimed me. Not the version you gave the crowd. The truth. For a long moment, Kaelin said nothing. Then he stood and moved around the table toward her. Each step was measured, predatory. Aelith held her ground, though her heart raced. He stopped close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. The truth, he said quietly, is that I have been waiting for you my entire life. Aelith inhaled sharply. What? There is a prophecy. His voice was low, rough-edged, spoken by the moon priestesses 1,000 years ago. It says that when the Valdris line grows weak, when darkness threatens to consume the territories, a wolf will rise from the ashes of a fallen house, a wolf with silver fire in her veins, and she will either save us all or destroy everything. And you think that wolf is me? I know it is. Kaelin raised his hand, and Aelith watched in shock as faint silver light began to pulse beneath her skin, visible even through her sleeve. Because the moment I saw you standing in that amphitheater, refusing to break. The dormant magic in your blood reached out to mine. Two flames, seeking each other across a crowded room. The silver light grew brighter, warmth spreading through Aelith's veins like liquid fire. She gasped, suddenly dizzy, and Kaelin caught her before she could fall. "What's happening to me?" she managed. "The awakening has begun." His arms tightened around her. "Your power is rising, responding to the connection between us. But it's happening too fast. Your body isn't ready." The warmth became heat. The heat became burning. Aelith cried out as pain lanced through her bones aching as if they were being reshaped from the inside. "Make it stop," she pleaded. "I can't," Kaelin's voice was anguished. "But I can anchor you. Hold on to me, Aelith. Focus on my voice, on my heartbeat. Don't let the fire consume you." She clung to him desperately, burying her face in his chest. His heartbeat thundered beneath her ear, steady and strong, and she focused on it like a lifeline. Slowly, impossibly, the burning began to recede. When it finally faded, Aelith sagged against him, exhausted. Kaelin lowered them both to the floor, cradling her in his arms. "What am I becoming?" she whispered. "Something magnificent," he said softly. "Something that hasn't existed in 1,000 years." He pressed his lips to her hair, and the tenderness of the gesture made her chest ache. "And I will protect you through every moment of it. I swear it on my soul." Aelith looked up at him, this powerful king who held her so gently, and saw something in his ash-gray eyes that left her breathless. Not hunger this time, hope. But before she could respond, the doors burst open and a guard rushed in, his face pale with terror. "Your Majesty, scouts have returned from the northern border. The Shadow Pack is marching. They'll reach Valdres within 3 days." Kaelin went rigid. "How many?" "Thousands, my king. And they're led by someone we thought was dead." The guard swallowed hard. "Lord Fenris, your father's executioner, the one who murdered my mother." Kaelin's voice had turned to ice. His arms tightened around Aelith. "The one who cursed my bloodline." Aelith felt his heartbeat change beneath her cheek, felt it transform from steady and strong to rapid and furious. When she looked up at his face, his eyes had shifted to burning gold. "Summon the War Council," Kaelin commanded, "and double the guard on the Queen's chambers." "The Queen?" The guard's eyes darted to Aelith. "You heard me." Kaelin rose, lifting Aelith with him. "My mate, my queen. Protect her with your life, or forfeit it." As the guard fled to obey, Aelith gripped Kaelin's arm. "What's happening? Who is Fenris?" Kaelin's jaw tightened. "A nightmare from my past, one I thought I had escaped." He looked down at her, and in his golden eyes she saw a fear that matched the terror growing in her own chest. "He was the one who discovered the prophecy, Aelith. He spent 20 years hunting for the wolf with silver fire." The words hit Aelith like a physical blow. "And now he's coming here." "Yes." Kaelin cupped her face in his hands, his touch desperate. "He's coming for you." By the following dawn, the fortress had transformed. What had seemed a palace became a war machine. Soldiers drilled in the courtyards. Blacksmiths worked through the night, forging weapons. Scouts came and went in constant rotation, their reports growing grimmer with each passing hour. And Aelith remained locked in the Queen's chambers, guarded by 6 wolves who wouldn't even let her open a window. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, pacing the length of the room for the 100th time. "I'm not some fragile doll that needs to be hidden away." Brielle looked up from the tapestry she was pretending to examine. "You're the prophesied wolf with ancient power. Fenris has spent 2 decades searching for you. I think a little caution is warranted." "Caution is one thing, imprisonment is another." A soft knock interrupted her pacing. Aelith moved toward the door, but one of the guards held up his hand. "Stay back, my queen. Let us verify." The door opened before he could finish. Marin slipped through the gap, moving with surprising speed for someone so elderly. "Leave us," she commanded the guards. "Our orders are to remain with the queen at all times." "Your orders come from Kaelin, so do mine." Marin fixed the guard with a stare that could have frozen fire. "And mine supersede yours. Out." The guards exchanged uncertain glances but obeyed, filing into the corridor and closing the door behind them. "Brielle," Marin said, "stand by the door. Warn us if anyone approaches." Brielle nodded, positioning herself beside the entrance. Marin crossed to Aelith with urgent steps. "We don't have much time. The magic inside you is growing faster than I anticipated. Faster than your body can adapt. If we don't teach you to control it, it will tear you apart from the inside." "Control it?" Aelith shook her head. I don't even understand what it is. It's the silver flame. The original power of the wolf bloodlines, before it was scattered and diluted through generations. Marin gripped Aelith's hands in her wrinkled fingers. The Ember Wolves weren't always weak, child. They were the keepers of this flame. When the first Alpha King wanted to consolidate power, he hunted them nearly to extinction. But some survived. Some hid their light deep within their blood, passing it down secretly through the generations. My family. Aelith's throat tightened. My mother never said anything about this. Your mother probably didn't know. The knowledge was lost, buried under centuries of shame and servitude. Marin's eyes softened, but the power remained, sleeping, waiting for the right catalyst to awaken it. Kaelin. Yes, the prophecy speaks of two wolves whose souls are bound by fate. When the silver flame meets its true mate, both are transformed, both become more than they were. Marin squeezed her hands. Kaelin isn't just your mate, Aelith. He's the key that unlocked the door inside you. Aelith thought of the heat that had coursed through her when he kissed her wrist, the burning that had nearly consumed her in the Great Hall. But the power is hurting me, because you're fighting it. Your mind doesn't understand what your blood already knows. Marin released her hands and stepped back. Close your eyes. Aelith obeyed reluctantly. Now, reach inside yourself. Past the fear, past the confusion. Find the warmth at your center. At first, Aelith felt nothing, just darkness and her own racing heartbeat. But then, slowly, she became aware of something else. A glowing ember buried deep within her chest, pulsing with gentle light. I see it, she whispered. It's beautiful. That's your true self. Your wolf spirit merged with the silver flame. Marin's voice was gentle. Now, instead of pushing it away, welcome it. Invite it to grow. Aelith hesitated. Every instinct screamed at her to contain the fire, to keep it small and manageable. But she thought of Kaelin's face when he'd held her through the burning. The hope in his eyes, the way he'd sworn to protect her. She stopped fighting. The ember expanded, warmth flooding through her body like sunlight breaking through clouds. But this time, there was no pain. Instead, she felt strength, vast and ancient, and utterly hers. When she opened her eyes, her hands were glowing with soft, silver light. Oh, she breathed. Beautiful. Marin smiled, genuine wonder crossing her weathered face. The last wolf who could do this died 300 years ago. I never thought I'd live to see. The door slammed open. Kaelin stood in the entrance, his chest heaving, his eyes wild with a mixture of fear and fury. What are you doing? He demanded. I felt through the bond I thought you were. He stopped, stared at her glowing hands. The anger drained from his face, replaced by something Aelith couldn't name. You've awakened it, he said quietly. Already, Marin was teaching me to control it. Aelith let the light fade, though she could still feel the energy humming beneath her skin. I'm sorry if I frightened you. Kaelin crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. The embrace was crushing, desperate, as if he were afraid she might disappear. I thought you were being attacked, he said against her hair. Through the bond, all I felt was power surging. I thought Fenris had found a way to reach you. Aelith wrapped her arms around him, holding him just as tightly. I'm here. I'm safe. They stood like that for a long moment, 2 souls clinging to each other in the eye of a gathering storm. Finally, Kaelin pulled back, though he kept his hands on her shoulders. We need to talk. About Fenris. About the war that's coming. His expression grew taut. About things I should have told you from the beginning. Then tell me now. He led her to the window seat, settling beside her with their knees touching. Marin and Brielle remained near the door, giving them privacy. 20 years ago, Kaelin began, his voice heavy with old grief. Fenris was my father's most trusted general. He was also secretly studying forbidden magic, searching for ways to enhance wolf power beyond its natural limits. What kind of forbidden magic? Shadow binding. The ability to steal other wolves' strength and add it to your own. Kaelin's hands curled into fists. When my father discovered his experiments, he tried to exile him. Fenris responded by murdering my mother and cursing our bloodline. Aelith's heart clenched. What kind of curse? Every alpha of Valdris is doomed to watch their mate die young. Kaelin's voice cracked. My father lasted only 5 years after my mother's death, before grief consumed him. His father before him lost his mate within a decade. The curse weakens our bonds, drains our mate's life force until there's nothing left. Cold dread settled in Aelith's stomach. And you claimed me anyway. Knowing this, I thought I could break it. He met her eyes, anguish raw on his face. The prophecy says the silver flame can burn away any darkness. I thought if I found you, if the bond was strong enough. You gambled with my life. Yes. The word was barely a whisper. And I hate myself for it. But when I saw you standing there, when I felt our souls recognize each other, I couldn't walk away. I couldn't. Aelith should have been furious. He had claimed her without telling her about the curse, had bound her to a fate that could mean her death. But looking at the devastation in his gray eyes, dark as wet stone in the firelight, she found she couldn't summon anger, only sorrow. And beneath it, a stubborn flicker of hope. Then we break it together, she said quietly. Kaelin stared at her. What? The curse. We break it. She took his hand, and warmth pulsed between their palms. I didn't survive a public humiliation and a magical awakening just to die from some ancient curse. Fenris isn't the only one who can study forbidden magic. If the silver flame can burn away darkness, then that's exactly what we'll do. Aelith. His voice was rough with emotion. You don't understand what you're saying. I understand perfectly. She lifted her chin, defiance burning in her chest. I'm your mate, your queen. And I refuse to let some power-hungry murderer dictate my fate. Something shifted in Kaelin's expression. The anguish didn't disappear, but it was joined by something fiercer. Pride. Admiration. And beneath it all, a love so intense it stole her breath. He raised her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. How did I ever deserve you? You didn't. She smiled despite everything. But you claimed me anyway. Now we both live with the consequences. Before he could respond, a horn blast echoed through the fortress. Then another, then a third. Kaelin was on his feet instantly, his face hardening into the mask of a war king. They're here early. Fenris is at the gates. Through the window, Aelith could see black smoke rising on the horizon. And beneath it, like a tide of shadows, an army stretched across the hills. 3 days, the scouts had said. They'd been wrong. The war council convened in the Great Hall, but Aelith barely heard the strategies being discussed. Her attention was fixed on the window, where she could see Fenris's army spreading across the valley like a black stain. So many. There were so many of them. We cannot hold a traditional siege, one of the advisors was saying. Their numbers are too great. We need to strike first, before they can establish positions. And leave the fortress vulnerable? Another argued. The Shadow Pack has infiltrators. The moment our main force engages, they'll attack from within. Enough. Kaelin's voice cut through the debate. We will split our forces. Half will defend the walls, half will ride out to meet them head-on. His gaze swept the room. I will lead the charge myself. Aelith's heart seized. No. Every head turned toward her. She hadn't meant to speak aloud, but now that she had, she refused to back down. You can't lead the charge, she said, rising from her seat. Fenris wants you dead. If you ride out there, then I give my wolves the best chance of victory. Kaelin's expression softened as he looked at her. An alpha leads from the front, Aelith. It's who I am. It's suicide. It's duty. The word hung between them, heavy with meaning. Aelith wanted to scream, to grab him, and shake sense into him, but she saw the resolve in his eyes, slate gray with concern, and knew that nothing she said would change his mind. Then I'm coming with you, she said. Absolutely not. My power could turn the tide. You said yourself that the silver flame can burn away darkness. She stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. Let me fight beside you. Let me prove that I'm worthy of being your queen. A muscle flexed in Kaelin's cheek. For a long moment, he simply stared at her, conflict warring across his features. Then he reached out and cupped her face in his hands. You have nothing to prove, he said quietly. You never did. Then let me do this, because I choose to. Because I won't sit in a tower while my mate rides to his death. Something broke in Kaelin's expression. He pulled her close, crushing her against his chest, and pressed his lips to her forehead. Stubborn woman, he murmured against her skin. Stubborn king, she replied. He laughed, a rough, broken sound. If we survive this, I'm locking you in our chambers for a month. Our chambers? Despite everything, warmth bloomed in her chest at the word, ours. He pulled back to meet her eyes. I should have said it before, should have found the words, but there hasn't been time, and I'm terrible at. He stopped, frustration flickering across his face. I love you, Aelith. I loved you the moment I saw you standing defiant in that amphitheater. I loved you when you challenged me in the Great Hall. I love you now. Even though you're determined to drive me mad with worry. Moisture pricked at Aelith's eyes. I love you too. The words felt inadequate for what she felt. But Kaelin's expression told her he understood. He kissed her then, fierce and desperate, pouring everything he couldn't say into the press of his lips against hers. When they broke apart, the War Council was carefully studying the ceiling. Prepare for battle, Kaelin commanded. His voice steady, despite the emotion still burning in his eyes. We ride within the hour. The charge was chaos. Aelith rode beside Kaelin, at the head of the Valdris army, silver light pulsing beneath her skin. She had never been in battle before, had never even witnessed one, but instinct guided her hands as she released waves of flame toward the Shadowpack wolves, who rushed to meet them. Wherever her fire touched, darkness recoiled. Shadow wolves screamed as their stolen power burned away, leaving them weakened and vulnerable to the Valdris warriors who followed. It's working, she gasped, exhilaration and terror mingling in her chest. Kaelin, it's working. But even as she spoke, she felt something wrong. A chill crept through her bond with Kaelin, like ice forming over a warm spring. She turned to find him, and her blood froze. Kaelin had fallen from his horse. A shadow wolf stood over him, jaws dripping with blood, and even from this distance, Aelith could see the deep wound in Kaelin's side. No! Silver fire exploded from her hands, incinerating the shadow wolf before it could strike again. Aelith leaped from her horse and ran to Kaelin, dropping to her knees beside him. Hold on, she pleaded, pressing her hands to his wound. Just hold on, touching. The voice came from behind her. Aelith spun to find Varen emerging from the chaos of battle, but he wasn't alone. A tall figure walked beside him, draped in shadows that seemed to move with their own will. Fenris. He was older than she'd expected, with silver hair and a face carved from cruelty. But his eyes were what held her attention. They were pure black, empty of everything except hunger. The silver flame, Fenris said, and his voice was like dead leaves scraping across stone. I've waited 20 years for this moment. Aelith raised her hands, silver fire gathering at her fingertips. Stay back. Or what? You'll burn me? Fenris laughed, a terrible sound. Child, I've consumed the power of 100 wolves. Your fire is nothing but a candle against my darkness. She said stay back. Kaelin struggled to rise, blood pouring from his wound. Touch her and I'll. Fenris flicked his wrist, and shadows slammed into Kaelin, driving him back to the ground. Kaelin! Aelith lunged toward him, but hands grabbed her from behind. Varen's hands. Did you really think my brother could protect you? Varen hissed in her ear. Fenris promised me everything. The throne, the territories. All I had to do was deliver you. You betrayed your own brother. Aelith struggled against his grip. Your own pack. I did what was necessary. His arms tightened, pinning her against his chest. Take her, Fenris. Drain her power. Just remember our deal. Fenris approached, shadows coiling around him like serpents. Oh, I remember. You'll have your throne, Varen. Once I've consumed the silver flame, and every wolf in these territories bows to my will. His hand reached toward Aelith's chest, toward the flame burning inside her, and everything went dark. Aelith woke in chains. Cold iron bound her wrists and ankles, etched with symbols that made her skin burn wherever they touched. She tried to summon her power, but the silver fire sputtered and died before it could fully form. The restraints suppressed magic. Fenris's voice echoed through the darkness. A precaution I learned long ago when dealing with gifted wolves. Aelith's eyes adjusted slowly. She was in some kind of underground chamber, lit by torches that cast more shadow than light. Stone pillars rose around her, carved with ancient runes she didn't recognize. Fenris stood at the center of the chamber, beside an altar, stained dark with old blood. Where is Kaelin? She demanded. Dying, I imagine. Fenris didn't even look at her. He was arranging items on the altar, a curved blade, a chalice, herbs that smelled of decay. That wound would have killed a lesser wolf instantly. I'm impressed he held on as long as he did. You're lying. Am I? Now he turned, and his black eyes gleamed with malicious pleasure. I can feel your bond with him, you know. It's quite remarkable. And through that bond, I can feel him fading, each breath weaker than the last. Aelith closed her eyes, reaching desperately through the connection she shared with Kaelin. At first, there was nothing but cold emptiness. Then faint, so faint she might have imagined it a pulse, a heartbeat. Aelith. His voice whispered through her mind, barely there. I'm here, she sent back. I'm coming. Just hold on. No. Even weak, his mental voice carried command. Run. Whatever he wants, don't give it to him. Run, and the connection severed. Aelith gasped, feeling as though part of her soul had been torn away. Ah. Fenris was watching her closely, communicating through the bond. How romantic. He crossed to stand before her, close enough that she could smell the rot beneath his shadows. I should tell you what's about to happen. I find the anticipation makes the ritual more potent. What ritual? The one I've spent 20 years preparing for. He traced a finger along her jaw, and Aelith flinched away from his icy touch. You see, the silver flame isn't just power. It's a key. The original wolves used it to seal away the Shadow Realm, trapping the darkest magic beyond our world's reach. But a key that locks can also unlock. Horror dawned in Aelith's chest. You want to open the Shadow Realm. I want to merge with it. To become something beyond wolf or man. His black eyes blazed with fanatical hunger, and your flame, combined with your life force, will fuel the ritual that makes it possible. The prophecy said the silver flame would save the territories, not destroy them. Fenris laughed. Prophecies are interpretations, child. Words twisted by those who record them. The original prophecy simply said the silver flame would change everything. His smile was a wound across his face. And it will, just not in the way anyone expected. He turned back to the altar, lifting the curved blade. The ritual requires your blood freely given, or taken by force. I assume you won't cooperate? Aelith spat at his feet. Force it is then. He gestured toward the shadows, and figures emerged. Shadow wolves, their eyes as empty as their masters. Hold her. The wolves gripped her arms, their touch burning cold. Fenris approached with the blade raised. Any last words for your dying mate? He asked. I could send them through the bond before I sever it permanently. Aelith thought of Kaelin. Those familiar gray depths that had seen her worth when no one else had. The way he'd kissed her before battle. The love he'd confessed when he thought they might both die. Yes, she said. Tell him I'm sorry I couldn't save him. Fenris's smile widened. How touching. The blade descended toward her chest. And then, the wall exploded. Stone and shadow erupted inward. And through the chaos charged a figure covered in blood, his eyes blazing gold. His wolf half emerged in a form caught between man and beast. Kaelin. He shouldn't have been able to stand. The wound in his side was still open, still bleeding, yet he fought like a demon possessed, tearing through shadow wolves with claws and fangs, leaving destruction in his wake. Impossible, Fenris snarled. You should be dead, not while she lives. Kaelin's voice was barely human. Not while our bond survives. He lunged for Fenris, but the Shadow Lord was ready. Darkness erupted from his hands, slamming into Kaelin and driving him to his knees. Brave but foolish, Fenris pressed more shadows down on him, and Aelith heard Kaelin's bones creak under the pressure. You came to save her, and instead you'll watch her die. He raised the blade again, turning toward Aelith, and Kaelin screamed. Not in pain. In rage. In desperation. In love so fierce it shattered something fundamental in the air. Silver light exploded through the chamber, not from Aelith, but from Kaelin, from the bond between them, from two souls refusing to be separated by death. The shadow wolves holding Aelith disintegrated. The chains binding her cracked and fell away. But so did Kaelin. He collapsed, the light fading, his body utterly still. Kaelin! Aelith ran to him, gathering him in her arms. His skin was gray. His breathing had stopped. Through their bond, she felt nothing but silence. No. The word tore from Aelith's throat. No, no, no. She pressed her hands to Kaelin's chest, desperately reaching for the silver flame inside her. But the power that had burned so brightly before was barely a flicker now, drained by Fenris's restraints and her own exhaustion. Please. Wetness blurred her vision. Please don't leave me. She had known him for mere days. It made no sense that his loss should feel like the end of everything. But the bond between them had compressed a lifetime of love into heartbeats. And now, that bond was unraveling. She could feel it, feel him slipping away, further and further, until soon, there would be nothing left to hold. How tragic. Fenris's voice was steady, unaffected by the destruction around him. He straightened his robes, brushing off dust and debris. He sacrificed everything for you. His strength, his life, even the power of your bond, channeled into that last, desperate attack. Aelith looked up, hatred burning through her grief. I'll kill you. With what? Fenris gestured at her dimmed hands. Your fire is nearly extinguished. Your mate is dead. You have nothing left. The ritual can proceed without his interference. Fenris nodded to the shadows, and fresh wolves emerged to replace the ones Kaelin had destroyed. His sacrifice was meaningless. All he did was delay the inevitable. The wolves seized Aelith, dragging her away from Kaelin's body. She fought, screaming, clawing, but her strength was gone. She had nothing left. They chained her to the altar this time, the cold stone pressing against her back. Above her, the ceiling was open to the night sky, where the moon hung full and blood red. The blood moon, Fenris murmured, almost reverently. The same moon under which you were claimed. Fitting that it should witness your end. He began to chant in a language older than any Aelith recognized. The shadows around him thickened, reaching toward her like hungry fingers. Through the numbness of her grief, Aelith felt something stir. Not the silver flame, something deeper. The bond she shared with Kaelin, the one she'd thought was severed. It wasn't gone. Just quiet. Waiting. Kaelin? She reached through it desperately. Please, if you can hear me. Nothing. The shadows touched her skin. An agony unlike anything she'd ever experienced flooded through her. She felt her power being pulled, extracted, fed into the growing darkness that surrounded Fenris. Yes, Fenris breathed. Yes, I can feel it. The silver flame. The key to the shadow realm. Aelith screamed as more of her essence was torn away. Through her fading vision, she saw the sky above her ripple, saw cracks forming in reality itself as something vast and terrible pressed against the barrier between worlds. This was it, the end of everything. She had failed Kaelin, failed the territories, failed every wolf who would suffer under Fenris's reign of shadow. I'm sorry, she thought, unsure if the words were meant for Kaelin or herself. I'm so sorry. The shadows consumed her vision. The last thing she felt was the final thread of her bond with Kaelin stretching, thinning, preparing to snap, and then impossibly she felt him. Not through the bond, through something older, through the flame itself. Don't give up. His voice echoed in her soul, faint but fierce. Don't let go. You're dead, she thought back. I felt you die. Not dead. A pause, heavy with effort. Just lost. Find me, Aelith. Pull me back. How? The same way you awakened your power. Stop fighting. Stop resisting. Trust the flame. The shadows were crushing her now, compressing her very existence into nothing. But somewhere beneath the darkness, she could still feel warmth, still feel him. Trust the flame. Aelith closed her eyes. Instead of fighting the darkness, she dove into it. Instead of resisting the pull on her power, she followed it inward, down to the deepest place inside herself. And there, in the center of her soul, she found him, Kaelin. His spirit hovering on the edge of oblivion, held there only by the love that refused to let either of them go. There you are, she thought. There you are, he echoed. Their souls touched, their flames merged, and the darkness shattered. Light exploded from Aelith's body, not silver this time, but gold and silver intertwined, two flames becoming one. The chains binding her vaporized. The altar beneath her cracked and crumbled. Fenris stumbled backward, shielding his eyes. What is this? What are you doing? Aelith rose from the ruins of the altar, her feet not quite touching the ground. Power coursed through her veins, more than she had ever felt before, more than she had ever imagined possible. But it wasn't just her power anymore. It was theirs, hers and Kaelin's, merged through a bond that transcended death itself. Now, Kaelin's voice rang through her mind. Bring me back. She understood instinctively what to do. Aelith turned toward his fallen body, still crumpled on the stone floor, and extended her hand. Golden light poured from her palm, flowing across the chamber like liquid sunrise. When it touched Kaelin, his body arched. Color flooded back into his gray skin. His chest heaved with a desperate gasp, and his eyes snapped open, not gray, not gold, but swirling with both colors, a storm of silver and flame. Impossible, Fenris whispered. No one returns from the threshold of death. No one. Kaelin rose slowly, his wounds sealing as he moved, power radiating from him in waves that made the very air tremble. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of something ancient. You made a mistake, Fenris. He stepped forward, and shadows recoiled from his presence. You thought the silver flame was just power to be consumed, but it's not. It's love, it's sacrifice, It's two souls choosing each other across every barrier death can raise. Aelith moved to stand beside him, their shoulders touching, their flames merging into a single blinding corona. And love, she added, her voice steady despite the tears still drying on her cheeks, is something you will never understand. Fenris's face contorted with rage. Pretty words from doomed wolves. The Shadow Realm is already opening. Nothing can stop it now. He gestured toward the sky, where the cracks in reality had grown wider. Through them, Aelith could see something vast and terrible pressing against the barrier, a darkness so complete it made Fenris's shadows look like candlelight. You're right, Kaelin said. We can't stop the opening. Aelith's heart clenched. What? But we can change what comes through. He turned to her, and in his swirling eyes, she saw absolute certainty. The silver flame was used to seal the Shadow Realm 1,000 years ago. It can be used to purify it now, to burn away the darkness at its source. That would require... Aelith stopped as understanding dawned. All of our power, everything we have. Yes, we might not survive. We might not. He took her hands in his, their merged flames dancing between their intertwined fingers. But if we don't try, no one survives. Every wolf in every territory will fall to the shadows. Aelith thought of Brielle, her loyal friend, of Maren, the ancient healer who had helped her understand her power, of her mother, still waiting somewhere for news of her daughter, of all the innocent wolves who had no idea their world was about to end. She thought of the future she had barely dared to imagine, children with Kaelin's eyes, centuries of love and laughter, a kingdom they could build together. She thought of losing all of it, and then she thought of what kind of queen she wanted to be. Together, she said firmly. Whatever happens, we face it together. Kaelin's smile was like dawn breaking. Together, they turned to face the rupturing sky, hands still clasped. Around them, Fenris screamed commands at his shadow wolves, but the creatures couldn't get close. The merged flames burned everything that approached. You can't do this, Fenris shrieked. I've waited 20 years. I've sacrificed everything. So have we, Aelith replied. She and Kaelin raised their joined hands toward the heavens. Power surged through their bond, building and building until Aelith felt like she might burst from the pressure. Now, Kaelin's voice echoed in her mind. Now, she agreed. They released everything. Twin columns of flame erupted from their bodies, spiraling around each other as they rocketed toward the sky. When they struck the cracks in reality, the world turned white. Aelith felt herself dissolving, her consciousness fragmenting as the power poured out of her. She was fire and light and love, spreading across the barrier between worlds, burning through centuries of accumulated darkness. Through it all, she held on to one thing, Kaelin, his soul intertwined with hers, anchoring her, even as they both came apart. Stay with me, she pleaded. Always, he promised. I found you across death itself. I'm not letting go now. The darkness fought back. Shadows clawed at their light, trying to drag them down into the void. Aelith felt Fenris's stolen power adding to the assault. Decades of consumed souls all directed at destroying them, but their flame burned brighter. Their love burned hotter, and slowly, impossibly, the darkness began to retreat. The cracks in the sky started to seal. The terrible presence beyond the barrier screamed in frustration as it was pushed back, back, back into the depths of the Shadow Realm. And then, with a sound like 1,000 thunderclaps, the barrier snapped closed. Aelith fell. She woke to warmth and the smell of pine. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, painting golden stripes across silk sheets. Birds sang somewhere outside. And beside her, his arm draped protectively across her waist. Kaelin slept. Aelith's breath caught. She was alive. They were both alive. She reached up to touch his face, tracing the strong line of his jaw, the curve of his lips. His eyes fluttered open at her touch, and she was relieved to see they had returned to their normal gray, soft as morning mist. You're crying, he murmured. Happy tears. She laughed, the sound catching on a sob. We survived. We did! He pulled her closer, burying his face in her hair. The barrier is sealed. The Shadow Realm is purified. Maren says it will take centuries for any darkness to accumulate again. And Fenris? Kaelin's expression hardened briefly. Gone. When the darkness retreated, it took him with it. His shadows were too much a part of him, he couldn't exist without them. Relief flooded through Aelith. What about Varen? In the dungeons, awaiting trial. Kaelin's voice was heavy with old grief. He was my brother. I loved him despite everything, but he chose his path. Aelith pressed a kiss to his chest, over his heart. I'm sorry. Don't be. His choices are not your burden. He tilted her chin up to meet his eyes. The curse is broken, by the way. Marin confirmed it. Our bond burned it away, along with everything else. So I'm not going to die young? You're going to live a very long time. His smile was like sunrise. Long enough to drive me mad with that stubborn streak of yours. Promises, promises. He kissed her then, slow and deep, pouring everything he felt into the press of his lips against hers. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. I love you, he said. I will never stop saying it. Every day for the rest of our lives, I will remind you, I love you too. Aelith smiled through her joy. My king. My mate. My heart. The formal ceremony was held a week later, after they had both recovered enough to stand without support. The great stone amphitheater was filled once again. Every bench packed with wolves who had come to witness history. But this time, there were no jeers, no thrown flowers, no cruel laughter. This time, there was only reverent silence as Aelith walked to the central platform in a gown of silver and gold. Kaelin waited for her there, dressed in ceremonial black, his gaze never leaving her face. Beside him stood Marin, ready to perform the ancient rites of queen-making. As Aelith climbed the steps, she caught sight of Brielle in the crowd, pride and joy shining on her face. She saw warriors who had fought beside them against the shadows, wolves who had witnessed her power firsthand. She saw her mother, seated in a place of honor, no longer a servant, but a cherished guest of the crown. Their eyes met across the distance, and her mother pressed a hand to her heart, overwhelmed with emotion. She saw the space where Varen should have stood, empty now, a reminder of betrayal and loss. But she also saw hope, saw a pack united, ready to follow their Alpha King and his chosen queen into a new era. People of Valdris, Kaelin's voice rang across the amphitheater. I present to you Aelith of the Ember bloodline. Once scorned, once rejected, now revealed as the silver flame of prophecy, savior of our territories, and the wolf I have chosen to rule beside me for all my days. He turned to her, and his voice softened. Do you accept this crown, Aelith? This responsibility? This love? Aelith looked out at the sea of faces, faces that had laughed at her humiliation just weeks ago. She could have demanded apologies, could have made them grovel. Instead, she simply smiled. I accept, she said. All of it. Marin stepped forward with a circlet of silver and gold, the flames of their merged power forever captured in metal. As she placed it on Aelith's head, the crowd erupted, not in laughter this time, but in cheers. Wolves howled their approval, the sound echoing off ancient stones and rising toward the sky. They chanted her name, Aelith, 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 until it felt like the very mountains were calling to her. Kaelin pulled her into his arms and kissed her before the entire pack, claiming her publicly, just as he had that first night. But this time, there was no shock, no scandal, only celebration. When they finally broke apart, Aelith looked up at her mate, her king, her heart. They laughed at me once, she said softly. In this very place, and now they kneel. Kaelin's eyes blazed with pride. As they should. Aelith shook her head. I don't want them to kneel. I want them to stand, to be strong, to know that any of them, Ember or Valdris or any bloodline, can rise if they refuse to break. Kaelin stared at her for a long moment. Then he smiled, slow and wondering. This is why you're the queen, he said. This is why the flame chose you. He turned to the crowd, his voice carrying across the amphitheater with supernatural strength. You heard your queen. On your feet, wolves of Valdris. Stand tall and face your future. The crowd rose as one, thousands of wolves standing together, united by a woman who had been rejected, humiliated, and underestimated. A woman who had risen from the ashes of a fallen house to become the most powerful queen in 1,000 years. Aelith felt her eyes sting as she looked out at her people, her pack. She had come to this place expecting heartbreak. Instead, she had found love beyond anything she had dreamed possible. She had come expecting rejection. Instead, she had been claimed by a king who saw her worth when no one else did. They had laughed when the Alpha's brother rejected her. Now they cheered as the Alpha King held her in his arms. And in the warmth of his embrace, surrounded by the howls of wolves who would follow her anywhere, Aelith finally allowed herself to believe in happy endings. She was home. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you'd like to listen on the go, all my stories are also available on Spotify under my name, your channel name. You'll find the link in the description below. A big thank you to everyone who's following. Your support truly means the world to me.